Hey everybody, Hoosier Jedi here with another review for you, and this time I'm talking about, as you've probably guessed by the title of this video, the movie Big Hero 6. Now, of course, this came out a couple of years back. At the time, I didn't go and see it. It was just kind of one of those things. It's like, it looks like it might be entertaining, but I just don't really feel like dropping the cash to see it right now. But the other day I decided, well, it's been long enough, so I requested it from my local library, and I went. And when I picked it up, the lady that checked it out for me said, "Oh, this is such a good movie." So, if you're getting random endorsements from librarians, it's probably something of quality. Now, Big Hero 6, the movie, is pretty different. It's really kind of one of those in name only things that they do from the comics. Like, for example, in the comics, and do forgive me, I don't really know Big Hero 6 super well, but I do know that in the comics, members of the team include Sunfire and Silver Samurai, who, in terms of licensing, are tied up with X-Men. So those guys obviously got the boot. And the rest, what little else I do know, the characters have some slightly different. Some of them have slightly different names, like Ginger. I mean, sorry, Wasabi is in the comics Wasabi no Jinja, Wasabi no Ginger, and Gogo is Gogo Tamago, which is kind of a pun on the Japanese word for egg. I mean, it's one of those things that just kind of what happens when American creators try to create foreign superhero teams, and the that always seems to go along with that. And now I do recall there being a miniseries some years back that I never read, and I do know that occasionally, whenever Marvel would have one of those big, oh, this thing is affecting people all over the world, there would occasionally throw in a panel or two showing Big Hero 6 in Japan trying to hold down the fort there. But apart from that, these were characters that never hugely caught on. So it's no real surprise that when Marvel and Disney got together to make this movie, they decided, like, okay, let's just let Disney kind of do their own thing and take what they want from the comics and just sort of run with it. And frankly, that was really the best move. There are obviously some nods to the comics here, complete with Stan Lee voice cameo. Um, and they do keep some elements of it, but for the most part, this movie is its own thing, and that's not a bad thing at all. Um, and all in all, I have to say, this is that library lady was right. This is really a good movie. This is very much excellent all ages entertainment. Kids are obviously gonna love it. Adults and teenagers and stuff. It's fun for them too. There's a lot of heart in this movie. It's very easy to connect with the characters and to really empathize, especially with the lead character of Hiro. And the world in which they live in, this very Japanese influenced Sans friend Okio. A little bit of a tough to wrap your tongue around, but it is. I mean, it's basically San Francisco with a very heavy Japanese influence. And if, like me, you've lived in Japan, there are little details that you'll notice that it's hard not to get a kick out of. I saw what was clearly intended to be, for example, the sign for a well-known Japanese seafood restaurant chain, just sort of in the background. Is that you only see it for a few seconds, but if you know Japan, you're like, oh, it's one of those places. I've seen those all over Japan. I know what that's supposed to be, and that's cool. And they do a really nice job of introducing little Japanese touches to a lot of things. The Golden Gate Bridge being redesigned to look like the torii from Shinto shrines. You see bits in Japanese written here and there. You see like Japanese paper lanterns on things. They have these air generators in the skies over the city that look like the koi flags that are flown around Children's Day in Japan. I mean, lots of really, really nice touches. And so, visually, the movie is fantastic. Now the story, as I said, the story. I don't want to. I'm going to avoid spoilers for this one. I'm just going to kind of keep things very general. The story itself is very simple and, frankly, a little bit predictable. But movies that are all ages and are especially important, especially if it's important for them to be designed for young audiences, well, they often are pretty predictable, and that's not really a bad thing so long as the story is enjoyable. Then predictable is usually forgivable, and it certainly is in this case. As I said, they really do a nice job with the heart of the story. Hiro and his relationship with his brother Tadashi is really at the center of it, and the ups and downs that Hiro goes through in the story are really very believable, very heartfelt. Hiro suffers some tragedy, and it's very clear that in the later weeks following that he's suffering from what is undeniably depression, and understandably depression as well. Um, and the relationship Hiro eventually forms with Baymax and his friends. I mean, again, it's all very heartfelt, and you can't help but really just like all the characters and the story in general. Uh, so, and yeah, I said the visuals in this movie are great. That's certainly true. The action is really, really fantastic. I mean, obviously there's some anime influence here, in addition to just sort of the standard Disney quality that they bring to things. Um, Perhaps my favorite little bit of anime nod is later Hiro kind of wears this sort of armor and helmet, sort of blue with some sort of pinkish highlights. That's very clearly based on the similar outfit worn by the character of Pris in the anime series Bubblegum Crisis. And Bubblegum Crisis is kind of one of my all-time favorite anime series. It's particularly the original story from the 80s. There was a more modern retelling in the early aughts, shall we say, or something around there, late 90s, early 2000s. But the classic one from the 80s, dated visually though it may be, still remains my favorite. But anyway, as I was saying, um, story's good, visuals are good, lots of really nice music, the animation is great. The only real downside to this movie is that there's a lot of stuff that they really just gloss over. Like the main bad guy, well, he's called Yokai. But unless you read some of the supplemental material for the movie, you would never know that. The bad guy's name is never even said once. And Hiro's friends, they're all only ever known by their nicknames. What their actual real names are, I mean, it never gets said. And his friends also, they really don't have anything going on besides their connection to Hiro. Now, granted, of course, Hiro is the main protagonist. The story is basically centered around him. It's his journey. It's his journey. It's his story. But I would have liked a little bit more going on with the side characters, being fleshed out a little bit more as individual people. Here in the story, it seems to be like, okay, here are these characters, and here are some of the quirks they have, and you can't substitute quirks for actual fleshed out personality. But again, this movie isn't even 2 hours long, so some things do have to be sacrificed. This is kind of one of those things that, as great as it is, you can't help but wish that there was a little bit more of like this is something that it's a sort of a shame that this never kind of went as, for example, like a regular animated series, where they could have really kind of gotten into the characters a little bit more. I think that would have been really spectacular. Now, there has been kind of some speculation that they might do a sequel, and supposedly there's going to be a little bit of it in a future Kingdom Hearts game. I don't know a lot about Kingdom Hearts, so I really can't say. But in any case, at the end of the movie, you're definitely left wanting to see more of these characters. Because, despite some minor flaws, this film does have an incredible amount of charm to it. As I said, it's excellent all-ages entertainment. And I do get a kick out of the fact that the world that this takes place in does have an official designation within the Marvel multiverse. As I've said in other reviews, I really love alternate reality stories, and people out there handle the idea of a multiverse as well as Marvel does. They're certainly handling it a lot better than DC has in recent years, at least in my book. You know, that's the great thing about Marvel. It's like, yeah, everything happened. It just happened in one of the countless alternate realities that we have out there in the Marvel multiverse. And I love the simplicity of that explanation. None of this, 52 Earths in the multiverse. Like, no, no, no. But, you know, that's completely unrelated. But anyway, at the end of the day, Big Hero 6, not that faithful to the source material, but really, really stands on its own as a fun, enjoyable movie for anybody, and I totally recommend it. So, with that said, guys, oh, jeez, excuse me. I was trying to hold out until I could cut the video, but just didn't make it. Anyway, guys, as always, please, you can join me. You can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi, and of course, you can also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. And until next time, take care and have a good one.